Hey YouTube, it's me, Derek DC Phillips, author of Frightful Fables, Tales that will leave you screaming for more. And today I have a very special guest, personal friend, and bookstagrammer at Ansley Books. Hi, Ansley.
Hi, Derek. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you on the West Coast?
I'm good. It's still sunny here. I've got all this natural light. Loving it.
Jealous. It's a little,
It's like
little
dark there
dusty.
now.
Very. Well, before we really get into the good stuff, anybody who may be watching this and knows both of us, you out there know that we are vacation buddies. We go way back. We always have the same taste in books that we can just trade off to each other at the beach. We go through like 4 books a piece and we just swap them around. And I can say I vouch for Ansley's taste. She is my favorite bookstagrammer because I know she will never steer me wrong. Has not happened once. So Ansley, how did you get into bookstagramming? What was the idea behind this?
Yeah, so I was an English major at the University of Georgia, where you were. Go Dogs. And so I read a lot in college. I became an English teacher there for a while. I taught high school English. I love reading. And then once I left kind of that career, I still wanted to integrate books into my life. And so obviously I read all the time, but about a year or so ago, I was starting to think about how I can make it more of a hobby that lets me interact with other people more. Because reading, I mean, it's an individual sport, although you can share your preferences with others. So someone told me I should start a bookstagram. So I started looking into that world, and everyone was always asking me for my recommendations. And for years, I've been posting what I read on my Instagram stories. So every time I read a book, I'll say this is, number 5 of 2022. And that was just as a way to keep track for myself, where I can go back and see what I read and remember what I liked and what I didn't. And yeah, so enough people started kind of asking me for recommendations through that. And I decided to put it all in one place and have somewhere where I could point people to go to that just had all my recommendations there. So I started my bookstagram last year. And yeah, it's been fun.
I love that. And you have a nice tangible collage to look back on and say, oh yeah, I read all of these books. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So loving it so far. I wish I was more involved with the community. There's a big bookstagram community, and I feel like I'm always trying to be less on social media and more with my head in a book. So I don't interact as much, but there's a lot of great bookstagrammers out there. So
I have had that same sort of sensation where I I created a separate Instagram account also for my personal account to post creepy stuff because I realized I think I started getting, unfollowed here and there. Just because it's like every weekend is a new ghost tour. Some people
right.
aren't so into that. So I thought, okay, let's take it over there. But it is so true. There are times where I also feel the need to unplug and enjoy the movie I'm watching, enjoy the book I'm reading, instead of focusing on, the lighting and the aesthetic. But it's fun too at the same
It is.
time.
Yeah, it's a fun hobby to have.
So with those interactions that you've had with other people on Instagram and on your Bookstagram in particular, what has been, can you talk about maybe the most interesting interaction? Maybe have any authors responded, that kind of thing?
I haven't had any authors responding. Um, what I've found the most interesting, it's crazy to me that people can just find me who don't know me. I mean, that's what social media is when you're public. I'm just used to, I have my personal social media. So it's just amazing how many people stumble across my account and give me feedback on the same book that they read, or say, oh, you should read this by the same author if you haven't read it yet. Also, it's been interesting seeing people who are like family or friends who follow my Bookstagram account and didn't know that they were interested in books at all. So now we have kind of a new hobby together. So I like how it's kind of opened up doors to other people.
Yeah, it really is like a virtual book club.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have to say, for the people out there, Ansley also has the best book parties. If you're interested, Ansley, could you talk about the format? I know this is going way back, but
Going way
I'm
back.
putting you on the spot. But talk to people about your legendary book trading parties.
Yeah, so I used to do a thing where I would invite anyone who is a book lover, and you would bring a book that was wrapped, nothing on it, just kind of hiding the identity of the book. Everybody would bring one, and then we could take turns kind of white elephant trading books. And so everybody would get to leave with a mystery book. And of course, we'd open them there. Everybody would get to see what mystery book you opened, and whoever brought it could be like, oh, you know, here's why I chose this book. Here's why I loved this book. And also, it's also an opportunity to bring by books that you loved but want to pass along to somebody else. And so then, you know, you leave with more than one book. But I haven't done that in so long. I need to do that again. I feel like I don't have enough friends here in LA who would be interested. But when I get back,
yeah, fly me out. Seriously, that was the holiday party I look forward to the most, because it's so unique and there's really no pressure, because you're not trying to please somebody else. You're just hoping, well, maybe the book that I love will connect or resonate with somebody else, and it works.
Right. Yeah.
Especially when wine is involved too.
Oh yeah, wine, dancing, Britney Spears.
Cannot go wrong with
anything
any of
goes.
That. All right. Well, it's time for our very first official segment. This is our inaugural segment, which is our 3 top new releases. And I do want to put the caveat out there that we are defining new release as any book released within the last 5 more or less years, because I'm usually behind the trend. So I want to give myself some latitude there. So without further ado, Ansley, talk to us about your number 3, and we'll work our way up.
My number 3. Okay, this is a book that's not really characteristic of me. Normally I go for like fiction and thrillers and some horror sprinkled in there. But this is a nonfiction. It's a autobiography memoir, and it is Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. I think was so good. He's just an interesting person, and I always knew he was like cool. You know, he's kind of like the cool guy in Hollywood, and his Southern accent, and he lives in Austin, but his experiences in life and his outlook on life and just kind of his philosophies, and he shared like some poems he wrote and different artistic things he's done. I just became enamored with him. So I hear that the audiobook, he reads it in his voice, so probably the audiobook is also good instead of some random old white man reciting like so many audiobooks are. But yeah, I highly recommend it. It was a good change of pace from what I normally read, and he's a cool guy. Just like him more after reading it.
I have to say, on the one hand, I'm a little shocked, but on the other, one thing that I love about your taste and your Bookstagram is that you really, if somebody mentions a book, you're like, yeah, I'll give it a shot. Because I recall, I won't name the name of the person, but I did also notice on your page, you know, there was a particular autobiography that you weren't thrilled with. It was just kind of okay. But I like that you never hate on a book. You know, you always find something redeemable pretty much there. And I think that's so easy. Like on YouTube, you know, you always see, this is where this author went wrong, or this is what I hate about these books. And it's just so refreshing to not knocking that style either, because sometimes that can be fun and a little shady. But, you know, it's refreshing to focus on, here's what I liked about it.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you can appreciate that. I mean, the act of putting pen to paper is like an act of putting your heart out there. So I can find value in anything that anyone's writing, you know, and appreciate it and share that with others. So that's what I
I
try to
love
do.
that. Well, my number 3 I have here. This was on my nightstand for a while because it was like it was almost like a fairy tale treasury where every night I would read a chapter because it was that wild. It is Yours Cruelly by Cassandra Peterson, aka Elvira. And I have to say, this book was juicy.
That is a book I would never pick up, but I love that you found that. Tell me more.
Oh my God, her life has been so fascinating. Just her career trajectory, starting out in LA as, I think, a 14-year-old go-go dancer.
Wow.
She met Elvis. She was a groupie, like really naive groupie. And there was this innocence all throughout the book that was like, she just genuinely loved rock music and punk stuff and alternative, you know, entertainment. And so there were ups, there were downs. I laughed, I cried. It was wonderful. She even talks about meeting Vincent Price. So if you love classic rock, horror, anything over the top, highly recommend.
Cool. All right. Well, I'm checking that one out.
You got to. Okay. What about number 2?
All right. Number 2, I am going with The Chestnut Man. Have you read this one?
I started watching it on Netflix. Don't hate me out there. I didn't know that it was a book. So now I know.
Okay. Yes, The Chestnut Man, Soren. I can't say his last name, but we can look it up and put it in the video description. But
yes,
so good. Like, kept me riveted. About a serial killer. Can you hear me okay?
Oh yes, perfect.
Okay. It's about a weird serial killer. It has twists, it has turns. It is long enough to keep me happy. Like, I like the complications in a thriller. I don't want a start to finish kind of fast read where even if I'm really intrigued and all in, I don't want it to go by too fast. So I like longer books, but really good, very creepy. Highly recommend for a thriller. Very impressed.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna have to put that on my list.
You started watching the show. Is it like a mini series or is it a movie or what?
It's somewhere in between. It's definitely limited series kind of vibe. I'm not sure if there's going to be another season. I haven't read or seen anything, but I want to say it's around 8 to 10 episodes, but I'll have to double check that. It's manageable, you know.
Yeah, I feel like I should go into more detail, but it's always hard for me to do so on something like this because I don't want to give anything away. But I have a good review on my Bookstagram, so
perfect. We will check it out. And was it translated?
Yes.
Excellent. So it's
I'm pretty sure.
Where's the author from?
Norway, Sweden,
Norway. Norway. Right.
I think that's right.
Okay, yeah. We'll double check. We'll point people in the right direction. Yes. I'll have to check that out because I really enjoyed what I saw of the series. I need to get back into it. I'm bad about one episode and just getting distracted.
Well, just stop and go read the book and then go back and watch the episode.
Exactly. That's why
you can't honestly ruin the book.
I mean, you chastised me for a while because I had never seen the Harry Potter movies, but I was like, I want to read the books. And then you're like, you haven't read the books? Finally, I caught up, and it is 2022 and I'm still trying to catch up on the movies. So
yeah.
Behind.
It's okay. I forgive you. That's my one probably bad quality, judgy quality is if someone hasn't read Harry Potter, I'm like, how do you even call yourself a reader? But it's okay.
I know. I fixed it. I have the box set. I'm looking at it. Okay. My number 2, this was a wild ride. It's another nonfiction. This was, I don't know if anybody can see this, but it's The Trial of Lizzie Borden by Kara Robertson. First of all, we judge a book by its cover. And this cover is so simple, but just like, I know this sounds crazy, like the deep colors, it's very rich. You get the texture. Ansley, you get it.
Yes,
So,
I get it. I can smell it
mean,
from here.
yeah, just waft. But I mean, there's even mappage on the inside. Like this automatically just drew me to this book. And even on the back, I mean, the reviews, Mary Higgins Clark reviewed it before she passed away. Rest in peace, prolific author. And I almost want to do a video on her life because I did not realize how many twists and turns her career took. In fact, I don't think she became an author until published author until she was around 50, I want to say.
Oh, wow.
And then got all those books out. Anyway, it's just so interesting because it's nonfiction. It's all about the trial, pulled from court records, all that good stuff, and transcripts. But it reads very much like a thriller. So goes into detail about Lizzie Borden. If you don't know the rhyme out there, she took an axe, well, allegedly took an axe, killed her father, stepmother, very grim stuff. But this book goes into a lot of, did she do it? Didn't she do it? Why she was acquitted, what her life was like after, in the aftermath. So that's my number 2. That was a big, big favorite.
Cool. Also adding to my list. Now you're going to tell me to give number 1?
Yeah.
How was I supposed to pick number 1?
I know,
Like,
this is hard.
I'm still not 100% set on my answer. Like, I don't even know if I want to share it. Wait, you go first. Let me have your number 1 first.
Okay. So my number 1, I also kind of cheated because my number 1 is anything by Ruth Ware. Because every single book, my absolute favorite was The Death of Mrs. Westaway, but I think I let my mom borrow it and it disappeared. So I have here The Turn of the Key. I think we talked about this when you've read this one, right?
Yes, I've read that one.
Love it.
Yes.
Love, love, love all of her books.
I'll tell you this, and this is why I'm always honest on my Bookstagram about how I feel about stuff. I didn't realize, so I just read In a Dark, Dark Wood. Is that the name of it? Yes, yeah. Her other one. Loved it because you recommended that to me last time I saw you. Loved that and didn't realize that The Turn of the Key, is that what that one is?
Yeah.
Her other one. I didn't realize that was written by her, and I had read it and I didn't love it, but I don't remember why I didn't love it.
Okay, so I think one reason that bumped it up a notch, because like I said, I think from her, my absolute favorite has been The Death of Mrs. Westaway so far. Tarot cards, scammer, so much good stuff. I think what I liked about Turn of the Key was that it really did play with Henry James's The Turn of the Screw, which is, super old, classic novella, ghost tale. For anybody out there who watched the Netflix Haunting of Bly Manor, that's what that was based on. So I thought it was cool how she kind of modernized it with the governess, a nanny, the kids. But yeah, I can't really say. We'll talk offline because I don't want to spoil anything.
That's what's hard about talking about books like these, because you can't go into detail at all.
Okay, so do you have a hint at a number 1 or a tie?
Yes. Okay, so this is another one that doesn't fit into my normal genres, and a month ago I would have been like, why would you pick that as your number 1 book? But it actually is. I just recently read it, and it is Atomic Habits by James Clear. Have you seen this book? Okay. Have you read this book?
I will tell you, I saw it on a shelf at Target, and I just remember it because I think it had a really vibrant color, right?
Yes, it has a really pretty cover. Mine is, I didn't bring it up. It's downstairs, and a lot of my books are back in Georgia, so I didn't even have them to show. But look up the cover. It's really pretty and sparkly. But normally I don't like self-help style books because they I just don't feel like a lot of them have that much depth to them. I don't like feeling like I'm reading a textbook or that someone's telling me I need to change my life for whatever reason. But this is one of those bestsellers that's been a bestseller for years. And so it was on my to be read list. And I decided to purchase it about a month ago. And it was refreshingly like encouraging. Just about, not so much about like making yourself have goals, because so many self-help books are about set your goal, you know, you have to have drive, you have to make decisions that all go back to your goal, you have to make milestones, blah blah blah. And it's kind of a achiever kind of way to become successful, whereas this is the explanation that your daily habits, the things that you can get done in a day, the decisions that you make moment to moment can have such a lasting effect on your life if you just continue to implement them. And that the tiniest atomic habits can add up into something life-changing, which was just very, very encouraging, especially for those of us that, you know, we have a day-to-day job. We might have big dreams, but, you know, you got to pay the bills. You have your normal 9 to 5, and it's hard, especially being in LA where people like come here and they're just pursuing their dreams and they're, you know, going to be Instagram influencers or an actor, and they're just throwing all of their time and heart into that, which is really encouraging to see, but also it's not my cup of tea. So anyway, this just goes into the kind of daily ways you can change your thoughts and your thinking to kind of get where you want to be. And yeah, it's just encouraging. So I'd recommend it. I haven't written a book review on my Instagram yet about that one. So that one's coming probably in the next week. So you can check it out then.
I love how practical it sounds.
It's very practical. Yeah.
Because I'm with you, you know, I can be sort of cynical because I think some of the more popular motivational self-help style books kind of seep into, we're both in some form of education in our day jobs. And sometimes that jargon gets adopted and so overused that it doesn't mean anything anymore, right? Like synergy, right? Exactly. Everybody talks about synergy and it's like, okay, but what was that again? Because I think we had a definition for it.
Right. Right.
Now it's just a LinkedIn hashtag. So,
right, exactly. Yeah, it's
since
like
you recommend it.
The way he's writing it is from someone like, I studied these things and here's what I learned and I want to share them with you. And it's kind of like you're having a drink with a buddy who has become a specialist in something. You're just wanting to absorb that knowledge. So yeah, I recommend it.
That's
I also
really
took
nice.
I would like read a few chapters and then I would go back, like, because I write in even my fiction books. I'd go back and I'd reread what I wrote and I took notes on it. And I kind of did that a few chapters by chapter. So I think I'm going to actually, for books where I do that, I think I'm going to start when I post on my Bookstagram, I'm going to post maybe the notes that I take as well. So people can get like a high level view of what's happening and the way the book is laid out and what are the themes and what are the subjects that are being shared. And then maybe some of my favorite quotes too, because that's what I love hearing about from other people, are the juicy quotes, like the things that are nuggets of wisdom. Like that's what I want to get. So I've got to find a way to share more of that.
Yes, bring it on.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming up with a number one. And it sounds like a great number one.
It was hard. It's a valuable number one. Yes, I highly recommend.
Excellent. Well, our next segment and final segment of our chat this evening will be just touching on your to be read list. I know we're similar in that in your book collection, your TBR is an entire bookshelf, an entire IKEA shelf or Target shelf or at home shelf. So I know I'm always super excited, like I'm gonna read this next, I can't wait. And then I order a new book, I find a new book, and that changes. And of course, a to be read pile could consist of comfort reads, things that you go back and read. I know you're a big fan of rereading, and that's a big thing. So what are you looking forward to reading most next?
Well, I'm glad you asked. I did bring up some of them. I didn't bring up my top 3, but I brought up some. Which also I'd like to know what you're reading now after this, what you're reading now or what you've read recently. But the number one thing I'm excited to read that I have been putting off because I really want to like absorb it is this Stephen King illustrated companion. So if you know me, you know that I'm obsessed with Stephen King. Like, love his writing style, love his stories, love his characters, love everything. And so this is a book that actually my boss gave me for Christmas. And it has like original not the original documents, but you know, like the original of his original manuscripts and different things like that. I love books that I can just like take out and feel with my hands, you know, it makes things more exciting. So it's like all of his first, I don't know how many books, 12 of his most famous books, a little biography of his life. And yeah, it's just a really pretty like coffee table. I mean, pretty, it's got his face on it. I don't know how pretty that is, but it's a nice like coffee table book. So I'm excited to sit down and like actually dive into that and learn more behind the stories that I love.
Yeah, pack that carry-on, please, when you come back to Georgia.
Yes, sir. Will do.
Well, my main next TBR book is called, actually, Stephen King recommended it. It's called Chasing the Boogeyman by Richard, I want to say Kismar. I think that, I don't know if it's Chismar or Kismar. I'm sorry. I will find out and confirm that. But what's really exciting about this to me is that it's not true crime, but it's written as if it were true crime.
Love that.
And a journalist is writing it. So I'm excited about this. I also ordered it from a website. If anybody out there has not heard of Thrift Books, it's an ex-library binding.
Ooh.
Which you can specifically ask for. So very crunchy and just, you know, it just feels so good to hold on to, and it was cheap.
Have you ever read any of Eric Larson's books?
No.
The Splendid and the Vile is the most recent one, but The Devil in the White City is one that he did, and it is true crime, but written as if it's a narrative and it has history sprinkled into. So highly recommend that one. I love the way that he researches his books and writes, and highly recommend that one.
Was that one based on the H.H. Holmes case with the murder castle? Okay, yes.
Yeah.
It's definitely on my shelf. So that has just been bumped up to the top of my pile.
Glad I could help.
Was there anything else? Did you have more of your TBR pile?
I do. I had to have a Stephen King that I haven't read yet. If It Bleeds.
I'm looking at it on my shelf too.
You are?
We're in sync.
I don't even know what it's about. I just know it has his name on it, and it's been on my list. It's short stories, isn't it? Is it?
Yeah, I think I don't know if there's maybe one or two novellas, but yeah.
Yeah.
I love his short stuff.
I
love
never get his short stuff. I don't have any of his novella or short story collections because I'm used to wanting to dive full into something, you know. But yeah, I'm excited to start that.
It's funny you say that because I'm kind of surprised with all of the limited series and stuff coming out, the whole King Renaissance. I'm almost surprised he hasn't revisited more of his properties. I mean, he did Dr. Sleep, but I almost feel like he should really, like I'm giving advice to Stephen King. I wish he would look back at some of his short stories and maybe give us more, like Children of the Corn. Hello.
Right.
You know, dive in. Tell us how that happened.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got easy material right there to riff off of already.
Exactly. Go for it.
Yeah.
Well, I had one more as well. I really enjoy Riley Sager. I read his book about Final Girls. It's been a few years at this point, and this will actually be my second book by him, but I'm really excited to get back into his work because I think he's going to be right up there with Ruth Ware for me. So I definitely want to dive into this ASAP.
Awesome.
Well, anything else you wanted to share or touch on, or tell the people out there at home?
Yeah, I'm actually right now reading this great collections of short stories and poetry. It's called Georgia Gothic.
Oh,
And I picked it up because one of my good buddies, DC Phillips, has some of his work in here. So I was excited to read that. Definitely skipped to yours first, of course, because I was excited. And okay, this is the perfect example of like a short story leaving me wanting more, because I got to the end of that and I was like, there's still suspense. Like, I want to know more, but you've just left it off so perfectly that so good. So
well, first of all, thank you. I'm blushing. Didn't expect that. But yeah, I know there are several stories that I would like to go back and maybe dive back into, revisit. And there is actually coming out at some point a follow-up anthology. So
cool.
who knows what might make its way there, you know?
Cool.
You
Well,
never
have
know.
you thought about like writing a novel yet, or what are your thoughts on that?
You know, it's funny you ask that, because some ideas have definitely popped into my head. I think that I love writing short stories just because they're like popcorn, you know, you
Right.
can ingest a lot at one time. And
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like one chunk of a movie that you're really diving into. I love a good cliffhanger. Even in movies, I'm the weirdo who kind of loves to be wondering and
Yeah.
have my imagination still going. But especially after having written a dissertation and going through that process of chunking things, making sure it flows, transitioning, I think I'm definitely interested in trying my hand at longer form.
Yeah.
And
Well,
you
you're
will
so
be,
good at this form, so
oh,
I can only imagine what you can come up with. I mean,
well,
like,
thank you.
I read it last week and it's like, you know, it's a good story when days later and weeks later, months later, and years later, you're still thinking about it, you know? So I was just so excited to read that.
Well, thank you. And you will be the first to know when the novel is far enough along in progress to have somebody alpha or beta read it.
Yes, please. I volunteer as tribute.
Yeah, thank you for that. Well, I have really enjoyed our chat. I hope when we give ourselves a another couple of months or so, read a few more books, I'm sure we'll be able to update our list and have a nice follow-up book chat as well.
Yes, I would love that.
Well, thank you for being here, Ansley, and thanks everybody out there for watching. We'll talk
Yes,
again
thanks.
soon.
All
Bye.
right.